Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for March 16th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last week, we've had precipitation mainly focused across the northern and western side of the Great Basin, with above normal precipitation across most of Idaho, into northern Nevada, and along the Sierra. However, still very dry conditions continued over this last week over southern half of Nevada into the southern half of Utah. Today, we'll see high pressure off the west coast beginning to build eastward through this week, with low pressure now has moved well east into the northern plains. However, still northwest flow and weak disturbances across Idaho, far northern Utah, into Wyoming will still provide cloud cover and some showers today. Looking at the ventilation index for today, with that ridge building into the west, we'll see much lighter winds across the western half of Nevada and the Sierra, and this will provide fairly poor dispersion in those areas. However, further north and east across Idaho, northeast Nevada, much of Utah and Wyoming, where we'll see somewhat stronger winds still today, not quite as strong as the other day, but still breezy, will keep ventilation indices higher. Looking at the individual components of the ventilation index, transport winds on the left shows those very light winds across the western side of the Great Basin and into southern Utah, and those slightly stronger winds across Idaho, Wyoming, and the northern portion of Utah into the Uinta Basin. Also, higher mixing heights in those areas in the north and east will again allow for better dispersion. By Thursday, the ridge of high pressure starts to amplify along the west coast and move eastward, with those lighter winds expanding further east with generally poor dispersion with the exception of parts of the eastern side of the Great Basin. Transport winds in the image on the left may not be quite as strong over the southern portion of Nevada or Utah as depicted, therefore generally poor dispersion is still expected in those areas. Looking at Friday, the ridge moves eastward across all of the Great Basin with finally drier weather in all areas after showery conditions continue in the north and east today and tomorrow. Therefore, with the ridge of high pressure moving eastward, lighter winds will impact all of the Great Basin with poor dispersion with the exception of the Snake River Plain. Winds across the Snake River Plain will be a little bit stronger with southeast wind flow. Therefore, we'll see better dispersion in that small area of the Great Basin with weak winds and low mixing heights in other areas. Looking at the Utah Forecast Clearing Index, the clearing index will gradually decrease as we move through the week and that ridge of high pressure builds eastward with lighter wind flow. Looking at the overall forecast amount of precipitation through early Saturday morning, you can see the only areas of measurable precip will be likely across Idaho into Wyoming and possibly into northern Utah where those lighter showers will continue, with drier conditions further south and west. Now looking at the extended outlook from Saturday through early next week, the ridge of high pressure is still strong across the Great Basin, and this will provide for continued warming temperatures and lighter winds through the end of this week into this weekend, with above normal temperatures expected and generally dry weather. The ventilation index will remain somewhat low in many areas, especially valley locations that have those inversions under lighter winds. However, as we move through later on Sunday and especially into Monday, we'll see an area of low pressure approach the west coast, and this will allow for increasing winds across the Great Basin and also bring more precipitation, mainly to the northern half of the Great Basin. Therefore, dispersion will be increasing as we go into later on Sunday and Monday next week. The ventilation indice maps are not working as we move into Monday and Tuesday, so again we'll be focusing on the left-hand maps with the weather pattern. As we move into Tuesday, we will see this area of low pressure move eastward, again spreading precipitation and still breezy winds across much of the northern half of the Great Basin, with still drier weather continuing over far southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and southern Utah. However, parts of southern Utah will see some moisture as we approach the middle of next week. Looking at the overall amount of precipitation forecast from early Saturday morning through early Monday, and the main areas of precipitation will be in the northwest and northern California and into the northern Sierra. However, the central Idaho mountains will still see over a half inch of precipitation likely early in that period, along with lighter areas of precipitation into northern Nevada. As we move towards Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll see these areas of precipitation expand further south and east. Looking at the overall forecast as we move into the very end of the month into the first part of April, we'll likely continue to see above normal temperatures over the southern half of the Great Basin with below normal precipitation. However, those wetter conditions will still remain focused in the far north. That concludes the briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.